What is your favorite breakfast food?
Chocolate candy. What is my favorite breakfast food? Is cereal in the morning every time. My favorite breakfast is cereal and cream cheese. I love healthy food.
Oh, you do? Good.
And I love candy or something else. A cereal, it melts.
All right, you want breakfast, baby? Yum, yum. Money, let me tell you.
In the morning, you have to eat because you might be hungry.
Yeah, mi amor, can you sit down first, please? Vamos, siéntate, mi amor, por favor. Wash our hands. Thank you.
When you wake up in the morning, you need to eat breakfast. When you go to school, and my favorite type of animal is the whale shark. So.
What do you think his favorite breakfast food is? The dinosaur.
Yeah, I think. Thank you for having breakfast with us. Thank you for having breakfast with us.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to this breakfast. I'm training Casey. I had to really think about that because I was training Kaznarek for so long, I didn't know if I would screw it up. Breakfast, as we all know, is the most important meal of the day, and thanks to Horizons, all of those kids get to eat breakfast every day. I found out yesterday that Horizons actually provides 80% of these kids' meals. Breakfast, snacks, a hot lunch, something they normally might not get on a day-to-day basis. And that is just one of the ways that Horizons for Homeless Children serves 225 kids every single day. Thanks to our friends at Horizon, meals, snacks served throughout the day, as I just said, and that's huge right now. With inflation and rising prices and the instability that we're all going through, it might be an inconvenience for us, but for someone who is struggling without a place to live, is maybe working multiple jobs and trying to make ends meet, being able to go to Horizons and not have to think about whether or not you put gas in your car or food on your child's table is massive. And I'm sure a lot of you are sitting here thinking, well, you know, if you don't have enough money, why not just ask someone to help? But not everyone is that fortunate to have that type of support system. Horizons actually surveys its families from time to time so that they can best understand how they can serve them and help them with the challenges they face. Many of them, Horizons has found out, of the families they serve, have nowhere to turn when things are tougher than usual. 64% of the families Horizons work with say they had to skip a bill in the previous month. 61% of their families said they did not have enough money for clothes, diapers, and basic needs for their children. 23% of the families said they had to reuse small clothes that didn't fit their kids and reuse diapers. 32% said their level of debt increased the previous month. The average family at Horizons only makes $10,000 a year. It's like $180 a week. I don't know how you survive on that. We're gonna read you a lot of statistics today, but I hope when you walk out of this room today, you don't think just about statistics. You think about the people behind those statistics. You think about a family who doesn't have a place to live. Maybe they're in a homeless shelter or transitional housing, or God forbid, living out of their car with their children. And maybe the next time you hear one of your friends complaining because, oh my gosh, they want to put affordable housing in my neighborhood, or they want to build public housing where I live. We don't want those kind of people in our neighborhood. Maybe you turn to them and say, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by those people? I went to this breakfast and I saw who those people are, and they're hardworking individuals who are just trying to make their children's life better. Or maybe, and we're gonna hear a story from our guest speaker, Stephanie Land, today, about what it's like to have to live on EBT cards, food stamps, WIC. And maybe the next time you're in a grocery store and you see someone in front of you, maybe buying a sugary cereal or a candy bar for their child, and you roll your eyes and think, that's what you're using government money for? Or maybe someone comments on that and you turn to them and say, why can't they give their child a treat? Why can't they give their child what they want in that moment? Because those moments are so few and far between. I had a chance to visit the new facility at Horizons finally yesterday, and I can tell you that being at this breakfast today is amazing and helping these kids in ways you can't even begin to understand. Because Horizons sees those kids, as I just talked about, not as statistics, but who they are. This facility is so amazing. I walked in, and Tara Spalding walked me in, and it's this beautiful open corridor with this mural on the wall, and something that she said to me really stuck. She said, when we designed this building, we wanted it to be bright and open because so many of these kids who live in poverty, all they see is decay and destruction. We wanted them to come here and see that there is more to life than what they have to deal with every day. They have these cool rooms called STEM rooms. They were using, Kate, you're going to have to remind me what this little machine is called, but it basically teaches kids how to code. Even I was like, I don't know if I could figure out how to use that. But these kids are learning things that they never would have been exposed to otherwise. But my favorite part of the entire new facility was the outdoor playground. And this is why. First of all, it's great. It's like that soft sort of mushy stuff that kids like to play on. There's like a little miniature climbing wall. There's trees. There's an herb garden and tomatoes, fresh fruits or fresh vegetables and herbs and trees. And Jade, who is now a director at Horizons but used to teach, told me that this is important for a couple of reasons. One, she still lives in Dorchester, or she calls it, one of the communities they serve. And for a lot of these kids, when you take them to a playground, you have to look around. Are there needles on the ground? Is it safe for them to play there? Is there someone at that playground that would make those children feel unsafe and you have to leave? At Horizons, they don't have to worry about any of that. They get all of that right there. And there's this little area, I didn't even know this was important, but there's an infant playground. And I wondered, well, why would you need an infant playground? They're little babies. What could they possibly do? But I found out that when you live in a homeless shelter and you have an infant, a lot of mothers don't want to put their child on the ground because it's dirty. Or maybe there are objects there that they might get into that are hazards. And so then that child's development is delayed because they don't learn simple motor skills like laying on their belly or pushing up and learning how to crawl. So then everything else in their life is delayed. But at Horizons, from the time that they're infants until they graduate and go on to kindergarten, they are given the tools so that they can catch up and be ready when the schools are ready for them. I hope you all have a chance to visit someday. I'm sure they would love to host all of you. There's even a community room that you can use, I found out, to have meetings and just see what it's all about. But at the end of the day, please trust me when I tell you that this place is life-changing for so many of the families. And you being here today and joining with us to support that work for Horizons has never been more important. This morning, you are going to get a brief update on what's happening over at Horizons. You're going to hear from one of the amazing parents, and then we are going to chat with our keynote speaker, Stephanie Land, whose best-selling debut memoir, Maid, recounts her experience as a single mom navigating the poverty trap. Her story, which I've been telling everyone today, I've read a lot of books on poverty. It is the best book on poverty I've ever read. It passed Evicted by Matthew Desmond, which is tremendous, but this is a first-person account. You can feel her struggle in all of her words. It really is. If you haven't had a chance to read it yet, read the book, because it exposes the physical, economic, and social brutality of poverty. But before Stephanie joins us, we of course need an update on everything that's going on with Horizons. Kate Barand is one of the most amazing people I met. She's such a champion for not just kids who are living in poverty, but ending poverty and homelessness in Massachusetts. So it is now my pleasure to welcome to the stage Horizons President and CEO, Kate Barand.
Wow. I think she should do my speech next year, don't you? I do. This is so amazing. I feel like I'm the rock star who arrived at their sold-out concert. So thank you all for coming. I couldn't be more delighted to be here, and I couldn't be more delighted to have you all here. Some of you, could everybody show me, if you've never been here before, would you raise your hand? Oh my, that's even more exciting. Love to have new people. Thank you for making the time. Thank you, and thank you to all of those people that didn't raise your hand who've probably been with us over and over the course of years. And I wanted to take a moment, because we have some really special guests here today, and a couple of them are actually our founders. And I wanted to just say, we've got Michael Eisenson, we've got Linda Mason. Do we have Roger? No. Okay, but we got Linda, we got Michael, and we've got a table full of board members who literally have been coming to these things for 30 some odd years. So God bless you, and thank you for showing up and being with us. We are also really excited to have First Lady of Massachusetts, Lauren Baker, with us here today. She is an enormous supporter of Horizons and actually was so excited by what she saw in our building that she has tried to replicate that in the design of other spaces around Massachusetts. And these are spaces that are going to be better for children and more welcoming, and she's just done extraordinary work. We also are happy to have Secretary of Health and Human Services, Mary Lou Sutters, who is another champion for many things that we do at Horizons and has been enormously supportive over the years. We've also got State Representative Marjorie Decker and the acting EEC Commissioner, Amy Kershaw, who is, again, making things happen when it comes to at-risk children and the subsidy system. We are also very honored to have Kristen McSwain, who's now part of the Mayor's Cabinet on Early Education. Actually runs, sorry, not part of, but runs. And we also have a few other, Christy Staples from United Way, another person who is really working on the homeless issue. I'd like to also give a huge, huge shout out, and I hope that the committee will stand up, but the amazing Women's Breakfast Committee who got all of you here today, please stand up and let us say thank you. I think in a moment you're going to meet Sue O'Connell, but she chaired that committee this year and brought with it the usual extraordinary energy of Sue O'Connell, and you will see that energy momentarily. I also want to thank Trenny Casey, and I too had to practice that because for many years she was something else, and she just does an amazing job, and I really think next year she should give my speech. Thank you also to my Horizons team. I know you're here, and you're probably all around the room, but I know this kind of event just takes so much effort. So thank you to everyone who did that, our marketing and development team, our educators, our advocates, our administrative team, and all the volunteers who came to help us this morning. And finally, let's give a hand also to the staff that is in this room, as in the people serving us our breakfast. Thank you. So family homelessness is a public health crisis in this country, and it is underrepresented, underrecognized, and underfunded. But we have all the tools at our disposal to fix this problem. 1 in 30 children in the United States will experience homelessness over the course of a year. If we were children in the United States, 33 of us would be experiencing homelessness. Anyone want to volunteer for that role? Probably not. In a country as rich as ours, this is just unacceptable. The causes of family homelessness are well known. One of the biggest drivers now is poverty, generational, consistent poverty. It's also driven by a lack of affordable housing, by domestic violence, and frankly, by systemic racism, which has denied access to economic opportunity to a large portion of our population and handicapped many children at the youngest ages due to unhealthy living conditions, food scarcity, and a myriad of other challenges. You only get one chance to wire your brain and to start all of your biological, neurological, and other physical systems within your body. There is plenty of research now that tells us exactly how damaging it is when those things get wired poorly in the first years of life. We know that already with the reduction in the Biden add-on to the child tax credit funding, there has been a 26% increase in food insecurity in children. It's just unacceptable. Massachusetts has one of the highest growth rates in family homelessness of any state in the country, and Boston is its perfect storm. The child poverty rate in Boston is twice the national average. The fair market rent in Boston is 50% higher than the national average. We are the third most expensive rental market, which I'm sorry, I believe the slide went up a minute ago, in the country. Like, we're above San Francisco, which to me was just a real shock. The estimated living wage in our community is $45 an hour. It's a far cry from the 14 which most people are earning in hourly jobs. We also have the highest child care cost of any state in the country. It is inaccessible. We also have children who need funding who can't get it. So we are literally the perfect storm for family homelessness. And we've got to do better. We just have to. So how does Horizons really come in? We have a front row seat on family homelessness in Massachusetts. And when I say that, I want to talk to you about what we see. And you're going to hear a lot about this. You're going to hear from two extraordinarily brave women who made it out of this particular bit of chaos. But we see women, young women, but not really young women, like they're 25 to 35, and they're living in staggering poverty and precarious situations with young children, and they're typically fleeing abuse or unhealthy situations. Our families, as Trenny said, have a median income of $10,000. Try living with your young child and buying diapers on $180 a week. Many have experienced violence and trauma in their youth. They are literally trapped in poverty, dependent upon minimum wage jobs, and 75% of them have absolutely no financial resource to fall back on when a crisis does hit. Your car breaks down. You're sick, you can't go to work. There's nothing for them to pull from. And they have absolutely no support system. So, when we all had a problem, we called our moms, we called our uncles, we called our aunts, we called our neighbor. They don't have those things. They're trapped alone. So today you will hear from people about the loneliness, the fear, the exhaustion, the judgment, and the broken nature of our entitlement programs that are so poorly structured that they actually keep parents from going forward. We have parents who don't take an opportunity to be promoted because of fear of what it will do to the other supports that they're getting to provide for their family. They literally turn down a promotion because if they get that extra $500 in their paycheck, other things will immediately be withdrawn. It's just not a system that's working. So, how do we come in? This is the brighter part. The most important thing to know about how Horizons tries to work is that our approach is different. We absolutely assume the best in our families. We do strive to lift them up. We strive to inspire them and to really respect them and support what their hopes and dreams are. We don't tell them what their hopes and dreams should be. We don't tell them what they need to do. We sit, we build trust, we build a relationship, and we try to understand what it is that they aspire to do with their lives. And then we try to help them get there. So when a family's referred to Horizons, unlike, in the book where she had to find a place where she could afford to go and get that voucher, children come in tuition free, right? They don't have to prove that they need anything. They don't have to prove eligibility. We know they've come from a shelter, they're homeless, that's good enough for us. And our early education program is housed in the most state-of-the-art facility in the state and offers the highest quality education in the state. You know, some people shake their head and say, well, geez, is that really necessary? And we say, absolutely. It's absolutely necessary. These children need it more, and they need it more than most. And the cool part, and Trenny alluded to this, is we have this amazing strength in STEM. So often, populations, particularly Black and brown children, don't get exposed to the exciting aspects of STEM and other things. And that precludes them ultimately from dreaming about being an engineer, dreaming about being a rocket scientist. So what we did is we brought in, through all these extraordinary partnerships, this one happens to be with Boston College and their dev tech team. So we have a little robot, and we teach the kids coding. We had our first group of kids graduate and from our coding curriculum, and they showed extraordinary progress. Not only did they learn more about coding, but this was the fascinating part. Those skills and learning that showed advances in their classroom activities. How? Well, interestingly, they learned how to structure and pace themselves. And so when they went into their classrooms and they approached new assignments, you saw them bring that same structure and desire to kind of pace themselves into that work. And a lot of what we see is that children come to us very emotionally and socially dysregulated. But just the coding classes started to get them regulated. It also got children collaborating in ways they'd never done before. And that translated into the classroom. We saw collaboration with children that didn't normally even spend time together, and they came together in the classroom as well. So it's just been amazing. We also have the Museum of Science. They've come in and done their engineering with our children, and our teachers are trained in that. And they come in and do fun Fridays with the children and the families. We actually had some building bridges and talking about gravity recently. And Cabot Corporation, I know some of you are here, came in and did a STEM Olympics with the children and the families. It was just an amazing day. I think you've got a picture, of some of that activity. You see the children on the stands. It's an amazing thing to observe. And while a child is enrolled in our early education program, their parent is actually enrolled as well. And their parent gets a coach. And that coach, which we call an advocate, is really there to be an advocate and to help that parent not only learn how to advocate for what they want, but to dream those big dreams. And then we help them figure out how to break it down into small, manageable steps that we can help encourage them to get through so that they don't lose faith that they can actually make progress and plan and get out of this situation. And we really want them to dream big. So our parents this year set over 500 goals, which is remarkable, and most of those were achieved. And you're gonna hear from one very special woman about how she was able to achieve her goals. We also go out into the family shelter system, and we've been doing that since the start of Horizons. And what we do there is we bring healthy environments to children. So normally in a shelter, there is nothing for a child. That's not the job of the shelter. So we go in and we put in these extraordinarily beautiful play spaces. And these spaces are outfitted with everything a child 0 to 5 and beyond needs to do what children learn through, which is play. And we've got pals. How many pals do we have in the room? Play space activity leaders, raise your hands. Awesome. Thank you for your work. So those pals spend 2 hours a week, same 2 hours, same day, every time, and the children look forward to it. And I mean, you hear shrieks go up in the shelter system when the pals arrive. And it's just a very magical period. And you know, it's those relationships and interactions that are really important to children when they're in this kind of chaotic situation. And just those relationships can make an extraordinary difference in the life of that child. Because mom is really preoccupied much of the time with survival. But our pals, they have nothing but time to share with those children. And they can give them their undivided attention for a period of time. So it's really a magical thing, and I encourage anyone in the room that loves kids to try to do it. But in the past 18 months, we actually took our 2-generation model and put it in the shelter system. What does that mean? It's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. It means that we decided to focus on the parents as well. And through a museum, through a relationship that we developed with the Children's Museum, we actually went into the shelter system and did little parent programs on play. Like, what's the importance of play to a young child, and how do you do it? Tragically, a lot of these moms had never been played with. Nobody had time to play with them. They were busy. They were living in poverty. They had multiple jobs. But we sit on the floor with moms, and we play, and we teach them how to play with their children and give them the supplies that they need to do that work with their children. And what's so extraordinary about it is that the moms began to create a community inside the shelter. And I can tell you, I was a PAL for 4 years, and we didn't have that program, and the moms didn't really talk to each other. They all had their separate rooms, and they stayed in those rooms. But this has brought them together in a really nourishing community, and they've been talking about how it's going, you know, one to another. Did it work? Did you try it? Is it okay? Did their child enjoy it? So it's just been incredibly good. We also started another parent program where we just provided them with tips, like what to do with a child when they are having a temper tantrum. What's the value of a routine? Why do we have bedtime routines? And we found the same thing. We found families coming together and getting really excited about doing that work. So these workshops have been incredibly successful, and the moms are feeling a great sense of confidence, which is what we want. And I just want to end, as I wrap this up, by saying this state has the tools to fix this problem. The question is, do we have the courage and the commitment to actually do it? We need to change the way we view poverty and stop blaming the poor for being poor and start helping them and fix the system that keeps them down. You can help us in that work. You can help us by supporting our program. You have for years supported us with your donations. Those are incredibly important. We have to raise $6 million a year, or 7 actually, and you are a big part of that at this breakfast. But you can also volunteer, and you can encourage your corporations to get involved. This room is a great example of how many corporations in Boston take this problem really seriously. So thank you to MFS, our lead sponsor, who is a huge part of what we do. I also want to recognize Victoria and Don Sullivan. They are our sponsors for today's breakfast, as well as Lauren Mazzella and Joe. These people who do this is what makes it happen at Horizons. But you can also raise your voice as a citizen of the Commonwealth. And I don't think I understood the power of this until I got into this role. But contacting your legislator actually makes a big difference. They listen. They listen when they hear from you. And we need you to get involved. We need you to encourage them to increase the child tax credit so families get more support for their children. We are literally the only industrialized country that doesn't do this on a regular basis at an adequate level. Also, ask them to make high-quality child care for all a priority this legislative session. It's really past time that we made this a right and not a privilege. It has been my extraordinary honor It's been my extraordinary honor to have you all here today, and I want to thank you for your time. But now I'm actually going to introduce you to the most extraordinary woman, and you're going to have the best time listening to Jayuanna, a mother of 2 children who came to Horizons. Please join me up on the stage.
Good morning, everyone. My name is thank you. My name is Jayuanna Harris, and I am the mother of 2 very beautiful, brilliant little girls named Jaya and Jade, and I'm raising them to be strong-minded individuals. Sorry, taking a deep breath. Okay. So I'm a 6th grade teacher currently. at KIPP, Massachusetts in Boston, and we are located in Mattapan. And I'm dedicated to ensuring that all of the children that I come across feel seen, loved, and heard. Believe it or not, that's the motto at the school that I work at, and it's amazing. So every day, I get to teach young minds who challenge me every step of the way, like every single step of the way. And they challenge me to be myself, to show them my authentic self, and the only hopes that I have is that I can push them to achieve their dreams. And some people find it hard to believe that teaching is my path, but it's like I've always had this burning passion to teach urban kids in the community, because growing up, I didn't see many teachers like myself. And right now in my ELA class, we're reading a book called Bud Not Buddy. It's set in the 1920s during the Great Depression. And in the book, the character is overcoming diversity, and he's overcoming a lot of issues. So in my class, we're learning about diversity, we're learning about each other's cultures, and as a result, we're building ourselves our own little community. We call ourselves a pride, like a lion's pride, you get it? So my heart is where the children are. And for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to improve the community that was around me. Unfortunately, I wasn't always in a position where I can pour into the lives of others. Just a few years ago, I was working hard to overcome a few struggles of my own. I'm here today to share my own experiences and to let you all see the difference that Horizons has made in my life. A few years ago, when I got pregnant with my very first child, I was in college, and it was a proud moment for me. I had a degree in one hand, and I had a baby on one hip, and I walked across the stage, and I felt like nothing could ever rip that smile off of my face. Until one day, I got a knock on the door from a constable. He told my family that we only had 3 days to evacuate the home. 3 days isn't enough time to find somewhere to go. So it was me, my 18-month-old at the time, my unborn child, the father of my children, my mother, believe the list is going on still, my grandfather, my 3 siblings, and my handicapped uncle. We had nowhere to go, so we ended up on the streets. As my Monday started to dwindle, we ended up going from hotels, we had to go to motels, until we eventually just had to separate altogether. Once we separated, me and my oldest daughter, Jaya, were sleeping in our car. And the girl's father, unfortunately, was not in a better financial position than I was to help us out. So when we also had to separate, that took a really hard toll. By this point, I'm 9 months pregnant, and I'm scared of what's gonna happen if the police knocks on the door of the car. I don't know what's gonna happen if we get caught sleeping in the car. And then, more trauma, I went into labor. So then, a week later, after I had my daughter Jade, we ended up rushing back to the emergency room because my daughter had stopped breathing. But Boston Children's Hospital had helped me find a temporary shelter, and even though it was really far out of Boston, it was an hour and a half away, as soon as I got a caseworker, I immediately told them, my #1 goal is childcare, but immediately after, I need a job. And I knew I couldn't have a permanent situation for me and my children, so I had to do what was right and to get into the shelter. And although Horizons didn't have enough space for both of my children at the time, they kept in constant contact with me, like daily updates that we're working on it, we are going to get both of your children into this daycare. And immediately I was connected with a family advocate. The first thing I told her was, hey look, I need a job. I can't get anything done if I don't have a job. I have my degree, but I've been out of work for so long, I'm scared to apply for jobs in my field. What I was trying to do at the time was work as a substitute teacher in the Brookline education system, and I was like, Maruska, this is a long shot, but I don't think they're gonna accept my application. And she was like, no, sit down, we're gonna do this right here, right now. The worst thing that can happen is they're gonna tell you no. But that was the thing that I was most afraid of, being told no. She helped me complete the application and told me if I don't get the job, it's okay, because we can just apply to other schools. Eventually, someone is gonna want a brilliant young mind to help educate these children. Horizons was good at things like that, always pushing me to be my best. Horizons' early education program welcomed me and my family in with open arms, and they became an extended family of ours. I felt like the teachers there actually cared about me, and they asked me every single morning, how are you doing? How are you feeling? We all know, when you're walking down the street and somebody says, how are you doing? They don't really care how you're doing. You just say fine, and you keep it pushing. But I can tell that they genuinely cared. They asked me every single day with true concern. My daughters, Jaya and Jade, learned how to speak Spanish. They learned some class etiquette. They learned how to regulate their emotions. And I had even learned how to become a gentle parent through the daycare. Shout out to Shauna. And what shocked me the most was that even the administrators at the facility were like very involved in the parents' lives, and they also cared about our well-beings. Horizons has offered me a safe space to grow and to heal from the trauma that I've experienced. And they helped me find a mental health support by getting me into therapy. And they would even give me a shoulder to cry on. And trust me, I cried a lot. They probably got tired of me crying. Although this seems like a no-brainer, Horizons even helped me gain access to healthcare because I wasn't sure how I could do that. And they also helped me get a primary care position. I was offered a lot of classes, and I took full advantage of all of these classes, especially the parenting classes and the mommy and me classes. And they provided myself and other parents with clothing, diapers, and food. Some days we would go without food, and I would have to decide if me or my daughter would eat, and I would always choose my daughter. Sometimes I didn't have enough clothes, so my youngest daughter, who was an infant, would wear my oldest daughter's clothes, and they would be long. But I cuff it up, make it work, until I came to Horizons, and they helped me get the things that I needed for my children. They also helped me accomplish a lot of goals and kept me on track with completing these bi-weekly check-ins. So they broke my goals down into subcategories. We would have our long-term goals, our short-term goals, and then we would have our in-the-now goals. An example of one of my goals was transportation. I needed to go to work, but my car was in terrible condition. I had gotten into an accident, not my fault, and I had to get my car fixed. That was my short-term goal. My in-the-now goal was, I need money for the deductible. I didn't have it, but I needed to get it now. You get it? In-the-now goals. And I needed a reliable car that had better mileage and could get me from point A to point B without breaking down. That was my long-term goal. But I also had other goals surrounding housing, fixing my credit score, and also going back to get my master's. But it wasn't just my professional and personal aspirations that benefited from Horizons, but my parenting skills improved as well. And because of the support that I received at Horizons, I can say that I'm now a better parent. For example, in my house, we have a corner called the cool down corner. And it's a little tent that has some strobe lights around it. We have books, we have a timer, and inside of the tent, we talk about our feelings. We go crisscross applesauce, knee to knee, holding hands, and we talk about our feelings. My children love to know the why, like why am I in trouble? Why am I here? Why do I have to do this? And I want to shout out to, again, Shauna for helping me find out these ways to manage my children's emotions. I'm going to give my children the best shot at becoming successful so that they don't end up where I've been. Horizons helped me build life skills, they helped me build financial skills, and as a result, I've been able to put away money long term, build my savings accounts, and also invest into my girls' financial futures. I would never want them to go without. I am going to break these generational curses. And I'm going to provide my children with emotional support that they need so that they can become those successful, stable women I mentioned earlier. Personally, I grew up feeling like I couldn't talk about my feelings sometimes because the space didn't always feel safe. But thanks to Horizons for helping me get into those parenting classes and those mommy groups, I know that my children will successfully be able to self-regulate. I know that this is working for them because they come to me willingly to let me know how they're feeling. They're really, really good at expressing how they feel. They will grow up to be kind young girls, and they will lead a successful life. Whatever success looks like to them is good enough for me. I would just love to say thank you for providing me this opportunity and this space to tell my story. And I really hope that we can help transform more parents' lives and give them a success story that they can share with their own children. Thank you.
Go, Jayuanna, you did it. Woo! That was so great. Hi, I'm Sue O'Connell. As you heard, I'm the chair of the group of wonderful humans that filled up this room. We're super excited that you're all here. I'm joined today by my family and a huge group of folks from Wellington Management Company, over 200 people, which is where I spent 25 years of my career. I'm also the proud mom of 2 young men who got their start at a Bright Horizons Child Care Center in Framingham. I know what quality childcare feels like, and I'm just so grateful I had that for my children. I got involved with Horizons to pay it forward. I want to support parents who also want the best for their kids, but just can't afford to write that check every month. That's why I got involved, but I stay involved because of this beautiful village that we are sitting amongst. Everyone in here shares a passion for helping others and lifting people up. I bet everyone in this room cries at the thought of a mom having to reuse a diaper because she can't afford another one. But you don't just tear up, you guys actually do something about it. I'm overwhelmed and proud to be surrounded by so many generous souls in one room. In a few moments, Stephanie Land will share her story with us. I read her beautiful book. She brought to life how suffocating the loneliness and isolation were for her as a homeless working mom. She felt invisible and wrote that she was starved for kindness and friendship. She did not see or feel a village like we have here. When my kids were sick or struggling in school, or when I questioned if I was a good enough mom, I had my Wellington village to lean on for a hug, some tissues, and the much-needed advice to navigate through the rough patches. This same supportive village is here today. When I asked for help on behalf of Horizons, 100 people showed up, and they brought over 100 friends. Anything is possible when you have support like that. Stephanie lacked this support, but ironically described community or home much better than I could in the closing chapter of her book. She wrote, "I stopped thinking home was a fancy house on a hill. Home was a place that embraced us, a community, a knowing." She also described the moments when people helped her without judgment as lifelines. So beautiful village. Let's link arms as the powerful force that we are and show the mothers and fathers of Horizons that they are not alone. We see you, and we are here today to give you that lifeline. Now, asking 1,000 people for money is way outside my comfort zone. However, nothing today should pertain to my comfort. This is about the kids. These are about children and their parents who are trying to help. So we just learned this morning that an anonymous donor stepped up and agreed to match $50,000 of donations today. Woo! So now our goal of $1 million this morning is in reach. We just need to find $200,000 in this room. Let's go. Now, giving is very personal. Look inside and figure out what works for you and your family. No amount is too small, and if you're a regular donor, please consider just giving a little bit more to help in these times of extreme inflation. Thank you so much for your generosity, and I'm going to turn it back over to Trenny.
Thanks, Sue. Sorry I awkwardly stood to the side there. It said Trenny and Sue, do they ask? Unlike Sue, I'm not afraid to ask a room of 1,000 people for money. Just ask my husband. You guys, There are 1,000+ people here. This is the largest breakfast we've ever had. There is no reason we should not raise the most money we ever have this morning, right? Let's get excited about giving money. Come on. It's not the holidays yet, you know. Here you can see, oh, I can see it here, but it's not, oh, there it is, there it is. You can see how your money will be spent at Horizons. $5,000 will provide mental health services for these families. Anyone who knows me or has followed my story knows that mental health, I'm very, very passionate about it. It's very personal for me. Imagine having all of the other issues going on in your life, housing insecurity, food insecurity, and now you're also, everything is so chaotic. How could you possibly afford or have the time to go talk to a therapist? But Horizons finds the time to help support these families with all aspects of their health. Maybe $5,000 is a little too rich for you. Maybe you just, I don't know, had a wedding or something. So maybe parent programs, $2,500. Play space, $1,000. Nutrition, $500. Art supplies, $100. There's all these different ways that you can give. So we made it very easy for you because, you know, technology and stuff. Everyone at the table, all you have to do is, and I have to read the script here, grab a pledge card. And you can either find the QR code on the envelope, and then you don't even have to like write a check or anything. Do people still use checks? I'm not sure. But you can just like scan the QR code, make your donation, and it's done. Once though you have done that, would you please write your name on, there's envelopes in the middle of everyone's table, and drop it in the bag, because someone at every table is going to receive a copy of the book Maid. We'll like pick a little raffle. Once everyone at your table has put the envelope in the bag, the table captain, Sean, I'm gonna make you our table captain. You love being the center of attention. We're gonna pick out, and then someone gets to take the book. Every gift today is gonna be matched up to $50,000. It will be doubled, which means twice the impact. And while you're filling out the pledge cards, are people filling out pledge cards? Why do I see no one moving? Let's move. Let's fill out pledge cards. See, I like the woman in the back who's like waving it like a terrible towel. I know that's a Pittsburgh reference. But honestly, listen, I cannot stress to you guys enough how wonderful this facility is and what it does for kids. Yesterday when I was there, like little kids were running up to every single person who walked in the room and worked at Horizons because they were like family. It gave them a place to go where they feel stability. Every toy is in the same place. Every book is in the same spot because it gives them a routine and it gives them something that helps find stability in an otherwise chaotic world. So while you guys are filling out that pledge card, which I know you're all doing right now, don't make me angry. I'm gonna thank our sponsors one more time. A huge thanks to Linda Mason and Roger Brown, Sandy and Paul Edgerly, Deb and Tim Diggins, Michael and Barbara Eisenson, Sue O'Connell, and our corporate sponsors, Bain Capital Community Partnership is an organization that does so much for Horizons and other agencies serving those in need throughout the region, Goulston & Stores, and JP Morgan Chase. We could not do this without you, without bringing 1,000 people here, getting up early, probably missing morning meetings, but I promise you every dollar you donate is worth it. It goes back to the most vulnerable kids in our community. And if that has not yet been hammered home enough to you about what it is like to live in that kind of poverty, we have one more very special guest who I should make sure that she's ready before I introduce her, because it's always awkward when the keynote speaker isn't ready and you call them up here. Are we ready? Oh, I got a thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, so Stephanie Land, her book, I could not put it down, but then it was also one of those books that I read that I wanted to keep reading, so I kind of kept stretching it out because it was such a captivating story. The Boston Globe says she nails the sheer terror that comes with being poor, the exhausting vigilance of knowing that any misstep or twist of fate will push you deeper into that hole. Maid was named as a notable book of the year by the New York Times and the Washington Post, among others. She was listed among President Obama's summer reading list for 2019. It was so well received that it also served as the inspiration for Netflix Golden Globe Award-nominated original series Maid. And today we are so pleased to have the author of that book, Stephanie Land, here with us today. She's gonna speak for a little bit, then we're gonna do some Q&A. So please welcome Stephanie Land to the stage.
Sorry, I didn't realize I had to across a whole football field. This is quite a big place. My goodness. Thank you for having me this morning. It's quite an honor to be here. It's always good to visit Boston and be reminded that our country is kind of old. I'm from the West, so, it's like, ooh, an old brick. It's so wonderful to see so many people coming out to this event. This is, of course, one that's very close to my heart, because it was, my kid was 10 months old when we moved into a homeless shelter. And I remember during those days, I sat up late at night, long after my kid had gone to sleep. And as the night stretched out before me, I tried to envision our future, how I saw it as a happy life. There would be a large yard of freshly cut green grass with a tree and a swing hanging from a branch. Our house wouldn't be terribly big, but large enough that my kid, Amelia, could run around in it, maybe with a big dog, which, if any of you follow me on Instagram, you know that I definitely have that. And she could build forts under the rungs of furniture. She would not only have her own room, but her own bathroom, too. Very important for teens. Maybe we'd have a guest room and an office where I could write, a real couch and a matching love seat, a garage. And at the time I thought, if we only had those things, that I would be happy. Around the time that Maid came out in January of 2019, several people said that my fall into poverty began with an unexpected pregnancy, but I've never seen it that way. My child didn't learn to walk in a homeless shelter because I had chosen to bring her into the world. She took those first steps on that dirty tiled floor because I just escaped an abusive relationship with only a couple $100s. Because my family had turned their backs on me and couldn't help us. And because I simply could not find work. And because I couldn't find work, a grant for childcare wasn't even obtainable. You see, I needed to obtain a job that I could do while my kid was at daycare before I'd even get approved for that grant. Because most daycare centers who accepted that grant were open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, the evening and weekend work and the restaurant work that I had done through my 20s was not an option. And so without any office skills or a college degree, and in the height of a recession-era job market, cleaning houses rose to the surface as the job that I would do. But after months of working as a maid, I saw that most of my clients had these things, the things that I had yearned for in those dark nights sitting up alone. And they did not really seem to enjoy life much more than I did. Most worked long hours away from the homes that they fought so hard to pay for. I began to pay attention to the items that cluttered their kitchen counters, the receipts for rugs that were as expensive as my car, the bill for the dry cleaner that could have replaced half of my wardrobe. In contrast, I divided my hourly wages into 15-minute increments to add up how much of my physical work paid for the money it took in gas to get to work in the first place. Most days I spent at least an hour. But my clients seemed to work long hours to pay for unused spaces and cars and boats and sofas that they covered with a sheet. They worked to pay the cleaning service that they had hired, who paid me just above minimum wage to keep it all spotless and in place and acceptable, while they paid for my work like some kind of magical cleaning fairy. I was anything but, shuffling through their house like a nameless ghost. My face had kind of an ashen hue from lack of sun. Of course, it was in the Pacific Northwest, so, Dark circles under my eyes from lack of sleep, and usually my hair was unwashed and pulled back into a ponytail or under a handkerchief. I wore pairs of Carhartt cargo pants until they had holes in the knees that were unsightly enough that my boss told me to replace them. My job offered me little money to spend on clothes, even for work. I worked through illnesses, brought my child to daycare when she was sick and should have been at home with me. My job offered no sick pay, no vacation days, no foreseeable increase in wage, and yet I begged to work more. Wages lost from missed work hours could rarely be made up, and if I missed too many, I risked being fired. My car's reliability was vital, since a broken hose, a faulty thermostat, or even a flat tire could throw us off and knock us backward and send us back falling toward homelessness again. I relied on government assistance to survive. Child care grants, food stamps, Medicaid, utility assistance, and even gas vouchers were absolutely vital and made it possible to use my limited income for rent, because the rent always eats first. There were days in the month before the food stamp money was replenished that I went to bed hungry or ate very little. After paying bills, I often had no more than $20 left for the month. No matter how hard I worked, it never felt like it was enough, or even that I was enough. We lived and we survived in that careful imbalance. And this was my unwitnessed existence as I worked to polish another's to make theirs appear perfect. But this is the reality for millions of workers in America struggling to survive on minimum wage. There is a myth in this country that if you work hard and pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you're gonna make it. To those who believe that myth, they also believe that if you're not making it, you're just simply not working hard enough. But the math just doesn't add up, and we're still fighting for 15. And estimates say a single parent would need to make at least $30 an hour just to make ends meet, or work 140 hours a week at the federal minimum wage. For those who turn to the government for support, there's often an air of mistrust and judgment. The stigma surrounding those who use safety net programs is that those people just don't want to work. But in applying for government assistance, I had to not only constantly prove that I was physically working, but that I wasn't squirreling away money somewhere or even driving a nice vehicle. My total assets, including my car, were not allowed to be more than a few $1,000s. Even a 50-cent pay increase could mean that I no longer qualify for child care or food to feed my child. And the aid application process alone seemed designed to discourage people from even trying. Paperwork was often dozens of pages thick and required access to a computer with internet connections and a printer. Little things like mandatory appointments with caseworkers in the middle of the workday could present an impossible hurdle. So I've known that I've wanted to be a writer since I was 10 years old. For 7 years, I scraped by as I worked my way through college in pursuit of a dream. But every time my car broke down or I lost a day of work, I felt incredibly guilty for pursuing a degree in higher education, especially in English. I felt like our life didn't afford me this notion of being a writer. And the government didn't really seem to approve of it either. The hours that I spent in class or doing homework did not count toward my required work hours to receive benefits. So as a full-time college senior, working 15 hours a week instead of the 20 that I was required to, with a child who was now over 6 years old, I was kicked off of food stamps. I saw it as being punished for fighting to better our lives and my ability to support my daughter. But the truth is that for those living in the margins, working day and night to survive, there often is no real path out of poverty. The welfare cliff is too high, and the obstacles are too great, the system is too broken. Though I would say the system reflects our country's caste system and works exactly how it's supposed to. In writing Maid, I hoped that the book would change the stigmas that surround single moms, especially the ones living in poverty. The stigmas that say we somehow deserve hardship because of terrible decisions that we made to get us there. I hoped that people would see how hard we actually work and how fiercely we love our kids, and how much we struggle to be enough while the government scolds us, telling us that we're becoming dependent on things that they call handouts, but we call means to survive. I hope that even though it's just me speaking to you right now, that you'll begin to see how many other stories just like it that still need to be told. Single parents, domestic workers, and those who are struggling so hard to get by. The housekeepers disinfecting hotel rooms, the grocery store clerks wiping down their stations, the restaurant workers, the bussers, the bartenders, the servers, the janitors in airport bathrooms, and the custodians in our schools. These people work to make our lives easier, and we are failing them by not paying them a living wage, not allowing them to support their families while we expect them to support ours. I hope all of you who are listening to my experiences begin to see that even though my book was about the gritty work of cleaning houses and struggling to survive, to me, it has always been about a mother wanting what's best for her child. So my daughter Amelia, she went by Mia in the book, but she recently chose to go by her middle name. And one night after I handed in the first draft of Maid, I thought that I should take her out to celebrate, since the book was basically about her. And she was about 10 at the time. And we started out by getting our hair cut. And the hairdresser had become a friend of mine over the years. And at one point she stepped back and she said, "Just think of all the work that you've put into this. You've basically been writing this book since she was born." And so as we walked to dinner, my daughter was quiet for a few minutes, which is pretty rare. And then she said, "Is that why my middle name is Story, Mom? Because you were writing a book about me?" And I said, "No, your middle name is Story because your dad didn't want that to be your middle name, or your first name. But I gotta say, Story Land is pretty awesome." But the truth is, her middle name came from a quote that I saw in the John Steinbeck Museum right after I found out that I was pregnant with her. As you're leaving, there's a quote on the wall that says, "If a story is not about the hearer, he will not listen. And here I make a rule. A great and interesting story is about everyone, or it will not last." As human beings, we are all part of a much bigger story, but we must see each other. We have to pay attention and listen to each other. After we had dinner that night, I took my daughter to the fanciest restaurant in Missoula, Montana. And we got dessert, and I let her order whatever she wanted. She was pretty thrilled when she ordered a butterbeer, and the waitress winked because she knew that that meant cream soda. And we got all this cake and ice cream, and we couldn't finish it all. And I watched her just laboriously take these last few bites of cake. And I thought about all the times that I had sat across the table from her like that, feeling like an absolute failure and guilty for rotating between grilled cheese and peanut butter and jelly, some kind of boxed pasta every night. Those years that we spent on food stamps were ones that I wished that I could have given her more. But those times that we really struggled, when I went to bed exhausted and cold and hungry, my number one fear was that someone would find out about us living in this studio apartment. I was scared that they'd find out about the peanut butter sandwiches and the mold in the walls that was making us really sick, and come and take my child away from me. I really believe that the only way that we're going to see collective change in our communities and in this country is by listening to stories not only like mine, but ones from people who have experienced systemic poverty and systemic racism. If we can somehow start to remove shame from struggle, we'll start to see how many of us are fighting in our own ways and create a movement toward empathy. Our dignity as humans does not reside in our success or how many hours that we're able to work in a week. Our dignity is being alive and caring for each other and recognizing that we are all equals who deserve the same opportunities while realizing that many just will not have those chances towards success at all. I am very honored to be here this morning and have an invitation to share my story, an opportunity to hear others. But we need to listen to people in our own communities. We need to listen to people of color. We need to stop and talk to those who are experiencing homelessness instead of ignoring them and find out what they need. By listening to others' stories, we will evoke empathy and inspire compassion. My story does have a happy ending, but that doesn't mean that I just went from welfare to work. I found a wild kind of success that most only dream about, that I dreamt about, but didn't believe it would actually happen to me. I am very honored to be here to help put maybe a different sort of face on poverty and to be a voice for an invisible population of people who too often go unheard and are now seemingly disappearing. I hope that is the part of my story and the part of our story that lasts. Thank you so very much.
Sure. So we were going to do a sort of a Q&A, but it's 9:13. So we're actually kind of do we have a stick mic for you? Oh, there we go. We really only have time for one or two. So since we are, and I know you have learned about Horizons and what it does, and that's what we're here raising money for, what would a place like Horizons have done for you when you were in the situation that you were in?
Well, my biggest struggle was always childcare. I needed it constantly, and I could never find it. I could never find a safe place for my kid to go. Even if I did get this very elusive grant, a lot of the places didn't accept it. So just the fact that there's a childcare center available and the support that I would need to work, that would have been a lifesaver.
You talk a lot in the book about the shame around being poor and just the overwhelming feelings of feeling like when you did get something, you didn't deserve it, it shouldn't have been there. And you talk today about listening to people. How, as a community, in a community that's obviously passionate about poverty and ending poverty, how can the everyday person do a better job of helping lift people up?
Well, I very much encourage people to leave a big tip. I have this tweet from like several years ago that goes viral like once a year because I told people to tip their hotel house cleaners, and I think a lot of people make faces at tip jars sometimes, but it is really, if I got even a $10 tip from a client, that meant that I could take my kid out for a Happy Meal, and because I couldn't afford it otherwise. It was that tight, the budget. So, and it was not because I was not working, it was just because I was not getting paid enough. And so, that is always one way. I always encourage people to call their local organizations and ask for what they need, and just feel good about giving socks and giving feminine hygiene products. And it's not exciting, it's not like a cute toy that you can imagine someone playing with, but that is what they need. And a lot of organizations don't have the capacity to hold a lot of stuff. So their lists are very important. And money is always good too.
Yeah, what did you need most? One of the stories that stuck out early in your book is when you were growing up, you loved giving families at church, you loved buying Christmas gifts for them, and you always wished that you could see the looks on their faces when you bought them the toys that you wanted. And then you said when you were in that position, you wish someone would have gifted you health care or a better paying job. So how do we balance those two things? Helping kids who clearly want, parents want to give their child something at the holidays or for a birthday, but also really giving parents and families what they need.
Well, I think, when you are in survival mode and you're hungry, you really can't plan for the future. I planned for the next day, just trying to make it through the month, really, and pay bills. And so I didn't even know that there were things like ample amounts of health care, or that you could see a therapist for more than 4 sessions. So, I tell people that the people who have means and bandwidth, they're the ones who should be fighting for affordable housing and health care and all of that. Because what I needed was, something as simple as a $10 gas card to get me through the day, or get me through the week, or make rent. I heard this wonderful story recently about someone who was just going around and paying people's old electric bills that they are threatened to have their electricity turned off. And I can't even imagine what that would have been like, just to have someone give without judgment and give freely. And really what poor people need are money. So as much as you can do that in any way possible, it makes a huge difference. And it's really boost of the spirits too.
Another running theme in your book is this feeling of judgment. You're in line at a grocery store and, you pay with an EBT card and someone in line says, "You're welcome," as though they're doing you some kind of favor. It's not always easy to confront people in those situations or make it easier on you, but how as a society can we view social services? Because America is unique in this, right? We're the only country that does not provide social services for all of our citizens. We look down on it like it's a crutch or it's a handout when it's really a necessity, but not everybody has that mentality. How can we explain to people how important those social services are?
Well, I can use food stamps for an example. I usually got around $200 a month, and that was my entire budget for food. And that also meant that's how I bought stocking stuffers and Christmas candy and birthday cakes. And that was also, if I had a little bit extra, that was one time that I could tell my kid yes. Because there were so many times that she wanted a toy or she wanted shoes or, something that I could not afford. But food stamps sometimes, if we had some extra, I could say yes and buy her candy. But those were the times that I used the self-checkout because I knew that somebody was going through an itemized list of everything that I was purchasing, and that they would think that their tax dollars were personally paying for candy. And that is just not the case. I think, because it's so visible, it gets very personal in some way. But really, those are human beings who deserve nice things, and they deserve candy. Their kids deserve candy. So I tell people to just kind of get over themselves.
What role does housing insecurity play in poverty?
Housing insecurity was the thing that ruled my life for probably a dozen years, 10, 12 years. When we finally moved into low-income housing in Missoula, Montana, it was just like I could finally breathe and I could finally focus on what I wanted to do. I could finally process a lot of the things that I had been through. I could finally process the emotional abuse that I had experienced, just what had happened to me in the last several years. And I cannot say enough about how much importance that had in my life. I could be hungry, and I knew that I would get through the week, but losing the house where my kids slept was just unfathomably stressful, and it still affects me. Not only PTSD, but panic attacks and anxiety. And I actually do own, well, the bank owns my house. They let me stay there. But like, it's still just, I have to check on everything. If there's a weird smell, it's just like, because I still think that just everything can drop out from underneath me at any moment. And I don't think that's ever going to go away for me. And it's just because the rug was yanked out from underneath me so many times, and suddenly I was putting all of our stuff into a car. That house is the 21st house that Story has lived in, and she's only 15 and a half. Wow. So that's how many times that we have moved in her life.
One last question, because we're running out of time, but if you wanted everyone in here to leave with sort of one thought in their mind as they go out into the world and talk to other people, what would it be?
I think it's just important to ask people how they're doing and be sincere about it, and to just know that you don't know the whole story, and you don't know what people are going through. I mean, even the people in this room, and I think it's really important to believe people when they say that something is wrong, and to offer them a safe place to tell you what is happening in their life, especially people who are experiencing domestic violence. The greatest thing that anyone ever said to me was, I'll still be your friend if you go back. And that was the most meaningful thing that I had ever heard, because it just seemed like I was judged again and again, even by my close friends, because I had somehow failed or made a bad decision. And I think it would be so wonderful if we were all just still friends, even after someone went back to the situation that they had been in.
Stephanie, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Your story is incredible.